car traverses an intersection in an idyllic neighborhood. Through the front door.
Yeah, okay, so now you got everything right. The only thing lacking in a check is you need to have an amount.
Okay.
Like, how much are you paying? So, fuck capitalism isn't actually a dollar amount?
Fuck. There's another one.
Hey guys, you're looking healthy. I'm feeling healthy.
Hey, Walter.
I wrote another story and I wanted us to read it.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, let's check it out.
So, your stories.
One.
This is your name at the top.
Oh. That one's mine.
All right. Here, I'll just read it. Because I've been taking those all occupation lessons.
Yeah. Good practice for the GED, right?
Yeah. Still don't know what those letters mean, but I'll figure it out. So, The Asunder Family. Written by Walter Pistachio Asunder.
That's me.
There needs to be foreshadowing where Walter sees an opossum. He witnesses an opossum crossing the road towards a group of children playing. The opossum did not see the children before it could avoid them. One child worked up the bravery to poke the opossum with a stick. It scared the possum into playing dead. The child with the stick was horrified and thought that he had killed the possum. All the children ran away, many in tears about the horror they had just witnessed. Upon getting home, Walter tearfully recounted the story to his mother. His mother, taking Walter into her arms, explained that possums like to play dead in order to make their attacker think that they aren't worth messing with. Walter was distracted and confused by his mother's unbound bosom. She normally wore chaste brasiers, but had just been caught getting out of the shower when Walter came home. Her large, pendulous breasts, pale with slightly bulging blue veins, smushed onto Walter's wet face. Wet with what? Tears. The firm protrusion of her large brown nipples teased his upper lip, just as it had when he was a baby. So you see, Walter, his mother said, nothing bad happened to the opossum, and you learned an interesting fact about the natural world. Isn't that interesting, Walter? Don't you think that it is a helpful strategy that evolution has granted onto the opossum? That is the story of how Walter learned his trickery. He learned his trickery from the natural world. It's good insight.
Makes it understandable a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
The story about how George realized he was gay. It is not referred to very, very much in the film, but it's true. When George was young, there was a new family that moved in across the street that had an older son. He was a soccer player with very strong legs. He had a poorly developed mustache growing out. He thought it made him look even older. George saw the family get out of the moving van. He thought,
I'd like to be friends with that kid. He looks really interesting.
what I'm trying to convey here is the budding sense of sexuality that swelled inside George when he said when he saw what would be his first teen heartthrob when he first saw him emerge from the moving van after a long, sweaty ride. George was obviously confused, but also intrigued by what he saw, not yet knowing what it meant. Let me tell you what it meant. George was thinking maybe he wanted the neighbor kid to stick a finger up his butt instead of sticking his own finger up his butt. That act would be really kind and empowering for gay people. That act would be really kind and empowering for gay people.
You see where I'm going with that?
Yes, there was a positive message in there. In any case, George had begun to suspect that he may not be like other boys, but now he felt clarity regarding his newfound needs. As George stood there, undergoing his epiphany, his mother approached the window from inside, her breasts bounding beneath a delicate negligee. She waved to her son through the glass. She began to spray and wipe the window with cleaner. As she sprayed, liquid squished back onto her face and ample chest. She lifted up the tail of her shirt to wipe her face, in the process revealing her toned stomach. Continuing to clean the window, she ran out of cleaning cloth. She proceeded to rub her ample breasts on the window, using her negligee to finish the job. Her job complete, she stood there with the negligee in tatters, The juxtaposition cemented George's newfound sexuality.
Because he didn't like that.
You didn't like it?
You really captured that well.
The story about how George became a business guy. It is not referred to very much in the film, but it's true. In the coming weeks, George became more desirous of the neighbor boy. George spent more time at the neighbor's house to avoid unwanted glimpses of his mother's ever-present bosom. He overheard the boy's family speak of places that George had never been to. They ate many fancy meals. The neighbor family was really rich. George talked like a stupid dirt farmer. We will never know if the neighbor boy was gay or not, because George never got a chance to find out. The family shunned George because George was poor. He vowed from that day forward,
I will never be poor again.
that is how he became a business guy. George, Raymond, and Walter all crowded into the car one day with their mother. Her bosoms were cinched together, held tight from the ravaging forces of gravity by a black lacy bra that she had received from the brothers' father during their previous anniversary, which was a sweaty Saturday night the previous July. So anyways, they're in the car. The boy's mother thought of that night as she ran over a pothole, her breasts bouncing painfully. Her lacy bra not supporting as well as a practical bra that sacrifices form for function. They're still driving around in the car. A few blocks further, the mother turned right into a gas station. Her breasts swayed slightly from the turning. She liked the feeling of her nipples rustling against the fabric of her blouse. Although the lace of the bra deadened the sensation, it was still arousing to her nips. In her state of mild arousal, she distractedly parked at the gas pump on the wrong side of the car. This caused her much embarrassment, as she had to re-enter the car and turn it around. So now the boys noticed that she had parked on the wrong side of the car. They were confused, so they started talking.
What's wrong with Mom?
Walter asked.
She parked the car the wrong way.
George said.
Does she have cancer?
Walter asked. Why? Why would you think that? Raymond said.
I think it is affecting her brain function regarding how to park the car.
Walter said. The mother's brain swayed pendulously in the cerebral fluid encased in her skull. The brain wrinkles rustled against the side of her skull, luxuriating in the sensuality. The waves of pleasure flushing through the brain made it think of the night its host had celebrated its nuptial anniversary in a pile of flesh, hair lube, the odd sex toy, a domination saddle, and sheets. The squeaky sex swing in the corner served as a fitting counterpoint to the ragged breathing of the knotted bodies eyes adrift from indulgence. The sex swing still rocking from its carnal debasement and soiling at the hands of two throbbing groins. The brain realized it was paying no attention to the gas pump. It snapped back to reality, its revelry blunted by the drudgery of the current errand. She removed the pump from her car. The boys called out to her.
Are you okay?
Walter said.
We were worried because you parked on the wrong side of the pump.
Yes, dears, I'm okay. I was just a little distracted, she said with a small smile, realizing her sons had no idea what she had been thinking of. She then described in detail the wine-fueled debauchery she's known for. The boys' mouths were agape, both horrified and titillated by the story their mother had shared with them. Walter, remembering the time the possum played dead, suddenly went limp in an effort to escape the discomfort of the situation. So then, Mom panics. She rushes Walter and the boys to the hospital. The doctors found nothing wrong with him. They chalked it up to the hot day. Walter had learned the lesson that when life becomes too difficult to bear, faking illness could distract from the problem. So now he has doubly learned that lesson.
That day was pretty horrifying and formative.
Yeah. I remember that day at the car at the gas station. I think of it as gas station day.
Gas station day.
When I smell those fumes, it brings me back sometimes. If your name is Walter and your nickname has to do with nuts, then your nickname would be Walnuts. It wouldn't be Pistachio. Why is this a nickname Pistachio? Is he allergic to pistachios? Was he eating pistachios one day? Was he a wrinkly baby? Pistachios are kind of wrinkly nuts. No. His class had visited a pistachio factory one day. He is enraptured by the smell. He tastes one of the pistachios and likes it so much that his classmates tease him. They say, Walter wants to marry a pistachio. Over time, that joke refines itself into a nickname. The name was carried home from school and adopted by his brothers. Walter never minded the nickname because he really did like pistachios that much. Also, remember, let's go back to the pistachio factory for a second. There were other things going on that weren't mentioned. A murderer was at the factory. He started chasing Walter. When Walter realized he was being chased, he did not yet know the man was a murderer. The man was scary looking, though. Walter fell to the ground with a squeal. He proceeded to play dead. The murderer walked up to Walter's prone form. The murderer muttered, "Of all the people I murdered, none before have died from pure fright as this boy has done." Walter then heard footsteps of the murderer walking away and leaving the building. Walter, excited by the second success of his new strategy, resolved to keep the incident with the murderer a secret, so people would not know how he had escaped certain doom. That is his secret power. So then all that other stuff about you tasting the pistachios happened too.
Wow, this I can see this this theme, this formative period of learning to deal with adversity
And murderers,
and murderers.
all of a sudden.
All of those things.
How Raymond got into punk rock. Raymond, at the age of 16, got a job at the local supermarket to pay for his budding interests in stamp collecting. He had his eye on an 1884 Lincoln halfpenny stamp issued with the president's first name spelled wrong. This lofty gem would take 3 months' salary to acquire. Hey Raymond, can you clean up all that bleach that spilled on aisle 9? Betsy asked from across the counter. Sure thing. Hey, do you know why I am working here so hard? Raymond said. It is because I want to buy a stamp. Ha ha ha, Betsy said. That is stupid. You are stupid and the values you hold dear in your heart are dumb. You aspire to a boring thing. After work, Raymond rushed out the doors of the supermarket. He ran towards home. A thunderstorm erupted above him. He sought shelter beneath an overpass. A homeless punk lay beneath a pile of cardboard. A beat-up ghetto blaster's stereo issued scratchy, indiscernible music beside him. As Raymond stood there shivering, the homeless punk offered Raymond a piece of cardboard. This simple gesture touched Raymond deeply, since the cardboard was all the man had, other than his battered old ghetto blaster. It made him realize how superficial modern society was. As they waited for the storm to pass, the man played some old punk tapes. This gave Raymond an introduction into what would become his favorite variety of music. As they talked, the old punk seemed to understand Raymond at a deeper level, and also appreciated Raymond's plan to acquire the Lincoln stamp. I still want to acquire that stamp. In an angst-driven paroxysm of rebellion, Raymond resolved to expunge shallow consumerism from his life. This firmly attached him to punk rock ideals. After the storm passed, Raymond made his way home. When his mother saw Raymond soaking wet from the rain, she ran up to him and gave him a big hug, squishing her now elderly boobs between their bodies. The boobs had aged a decade since the gas station. She could no longer justify wearing long lingerie and impractical undergarments, but she did anyway, giving her boobs the appearance of a grizzled prison camp victim wearing a fine dress. Pulling away, the mother realized that her aged boobs were now also soggy from Raymond's fleece jacket. The rainwater ran in glistening rivulets down the elongated course of her sagging boobs. Raymond was comforted.
Rivulets.
It's amazing how well you're able to get inside Mom's head.
Yeah, and you know, I'm insightful.
Yeah.
The story of how brothers build their rivalry. The rivalry doesn't really need to be explained because one is a punk and the other is a super boring businessman. It is not really hard to imagine that they don't get along. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, super boring.
I always knew I was boring. I didn't know I was super
Yeah,
boring.
super boring actually.
Oh, man. I should probably work on that.
Yeah. Well, that's you.
Okay.
You be exactly who you are.
Alright.
You couldn't boring your way out of a cardboard box. Stupid.
I see the GED studies are really paying off.
I still don't know what those letters mean. You keep using them as an insult, so go fuck yourself. Get erect, Daryl. Fuck you.
Brothers.
Asunder 3.